Hi, hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my first making of video. So today we'll be making a skirt for my friend who told me that she couldn't find this specific type of skirt anywhere, so I just told her that I could make her one. So we went shopping for some fabric and I promised I would make her one. She sent me these pictures as an inspiration. So we'll be creating something like that. Her first idea was a wool skirt, but we ended up picking this fabric. So this is the fabric. It's this gorgeous green, blue, black tartan-like fabric. And it is a flannel rather than a wool, but I think we can make it work. And the inspiration images that she sent me seem to be full circle skirts, so I think that's what we'll be making. Now I have 5 days to complete this, which should be easy, but I do have also some other obligations that I need to do as well. I need to submit an entire university essay tomorrow actually, but 5 days should be more than enough to finish a skirt. So before we make a circle skirt we have to do a bit of math. So here I've drawn the circle skirt and then I have here the length of the skirt, so that's going to be this length here, and then we have the radius that we need to count from our waist measurement, minus 2 centimeters, divided by 2 times pi. So what we're aiming for is to have a waistband and then from there a skirt. Yeah, beautiful, isn't it? But this is what we're aiming for. So what we need is the waistband fabric, and that's going to look like this. It'll be about 8 centimeters high and then about 95 centimeters with seam allowance. And then we have the full circle skirt, and this will be 60 centimeters, this bit here, and then we need to count the radius. So that's the waist, minus 2 centimeters divided by 2 pi. So that would mean 80 minus 2 and 2 pi would be, and then what we get from this when I open my calculator, and what we want to do is 2 times pi, and that equals 6.283. Let's do that. And then we have the 78 minus 6.283. And yeah, that's wrong. Divided by 6.283, and that would leave us with radius of 12.4. So our radius would be here 12.4, but just to be sure I'm going to be making just 12. And what I still want to do with this, because I want to add pockets to both sides, because that's just how one makes a skirt. I want to cut 2 pieces, like 2 halves out, and then add pockets in between. So this is what the process is going to look like. We have 2 halves and then these are pockets. So to get started you usually have to make a pattern, but for a circle skirt you don't really have to make one. You just need to use the measuring tape and pin it to one corner and then move it along and measure the right length, which in this case would be the counted radius, which was 12, and then the desired length, which was 60. So I did 73 centimeters to add a bit of seam allowance, and then I'm doing the radius there to cut off, and then I get my scissors and just cut them out, first the radius and then the entire length of the skirt. So this gives me 1/2 of the circle skirt that I was making, and Then I just repeat the process. I first make one straight edge because there's now the scrap bit, and then just repeat the same exact project. Measure 73 on the outside and then 12 for the radius on the inside. And then I cut it out as well, just the same as the one before, and I should have two identical pieces. Next I'll be making pockets. I take out my pocket pattern and use some random widget objects as pattern weights. I cut them out and repeat the process for the other pocket. And this leaves me with 4 different pieces to make the pockets. Next is the waistband piece. I tried making it from the folded fabric by following the stripes, but it turned out to be straight only from one side. And so I then opened the fabric and followed the stripes for the entire length of the piece and then got a nice straight waistband. I pinned the pieces together to see if they'd work, and they seemed to form a skirt, so I head over to the sewing machine. Before I could really even begin, I cut my finger on the needle. I still don't know quite how that happened, but the needle broke and I went to patch up my finger so I wouldn't get blood on the fabric.
A few moments later.
Yeah, so as a friendly reminder, just don't put your fingers too close to the needle whilst sewing. But with a band-aid on, I then continued the process. I zigzagged all the edges apart from the hem, and all 4 of the pockets got the same treatment as well. I then pinned the pockets on the skirt pieces, one piece for one edge, and then made sure that they were equally far from the waist. So as I am laying this down, you can see me making sure that it's as far from the waist as the other side. This just ensures that the pockets are in the same place on both sides. And I repeated the same process for all 4 pockets. And here I am just checking that the 2 pockets are in fact in the same place and will make a nice pocket together. The other one was a bit farther down, so I moved the other one to match that. Then I just sewed the pockets in place. I pressed the pocket seam as this will be the opening of the pocket and I want it to lay flat. So I wrote my essay the next day and continued this on day 3. I placed the right sides together and pinned the side seams and the pocket's edges together. It's important to leave the previously sewn pocket seams untouched so that you can access the pocket. That's that, all pinned, and then to the sewing machine. And voila, it looks like a skirt. This is me jamming to Nobody No Crime and showing you that it has in fact working pockets. And then it's time for the waistband. I find the front and back of the skirt as I want the waistband seam to be in the back. And I pin the waistband fabric to the skirt, right sides together, of course. And then again, I just sew exactly what I pinned. Once the outer side of the waistband is sewn, it's time for the inner side of it. I take the elastic and start folding the waistband over it. I pin the fold down, making sure not to pin the elastic. I decided to hand sew the rest as it will look neater on the outside. My needle is catching only the folded fabric and the seam right under it, so it isn't touching the outer fabric at all. I work my way all around the waistband, folding more of the fabric as I go. I stitch this with a slip stitch because it is a pretty invisible stitch. You can see that here, so I bring the needle back from where I came up just a bit, and I actively make sure not to touch the outer fabric at all. And on the outside, there's nothing there. Beautiful. And this is me looking for the pincushion, realizing it's on the other side of the room and deciding to use the couch as a bigger pincushion. I am always watching something when I hand sew things, so this is just footage of me watching a YouTube video whilst I hand sew, so here you go. Wow, enjoy. So a few days later I continued by sewing the waistband elastic together. I sewed a square and a cross to make it secure and then hand sewed the remaining 20 centimeters of the fabric over the elastic. I used the exact same technique as I used for the rest of the waistband earlier. Next was time to check if the hem was the same length all around. It was not, so I evened it out by measuring it and cutting the longer parts to match the shortest parts. My dress form actually had a kind of a stick right there where my hands are, so I used that. So every time the fabric touched the certain point, I knew that it was long enough. So you will see me not using the measuring tape that often because I can see the length by using the little stick there. So that's a huge help. But just measuring tape will work if you don't have that help there. Then it was time to sew the final part, the hem. I double folded the fabric and sewed that very close to the folded edge. I don't have the patience to pin everything beforehand, so I just sew what I have folded and then stop to fold some more. I just pinned the very first few centimeters just to get me started. Now, because the hem is a circle, the folding will run into some problems eventually during the sewing, but you can just figure it out as you go. Just know that a circle skirt's folded edge, folded hem, I should say, will never look perfect, but we'll press it later, so it's fine. And here I am a bit later, in fact, pressing it to make it look more flat. You can see the little ripples there, but it's fine. It looks good. They don't really matter that much. And here's the final product. Watch to the very end to see it on my beautiful friend. So that's that. I actually finished the skirt on time and I'm going to leave tomorrow and give this to her, and I think it turned out pretty well, and this just reminded me how easy it really is to make a circle skirt. I think anyone with no experience could do it. Like, you could very well try. It's super fast, super quick. If I didn't have to do my university essay, go to work, help my friend move or something like that, I would have easily finished this in one day. So it was easy, it was fun to make, I think it turned out super cute, and I hope my friend's gonna like it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please leave it a like and subscribe to my channel if you feel like sticking around. I'd love to have you here, and I will be continuing my sewing journey in the next video, so until then, bye!